Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katiethornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social-emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. All right, welcome back. Episode 17, We the People, Staff Wellness. We're going to be talking a little bit about staff wellness today. I feel like what I do maybe is I say the title, and we're actually... we're clear enough with the title that I don't need to do an explanation immediately afterwards, so then I don't know what to say. But we're going to be talking about staff. If we could start labeling, let's start titling
like really
something
abstract?
way more ambiguous, so I have to describe it right afterwards. No, we're going to be talking about staff wellness. First of all, how great was our conversation with Dr. Biddle in the last episode?
Awesome.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. If you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to that one. It was really great. Shameless plug for, I guess, our own podcast that we're already listening to. But no, I thought that was really great. I think it actually plays well into this one, talking about staff wellness. Again, we're initially airing this episode towards the beginning of a school year, depending on when you start and things like that. But it's definitely on the front end of a school year or just going into your school year. And I think this is an important thing for us to talk about anytime, but certainly at this point in a school year.
Yeah, I'm excited about this episode. I feel like the further I get in my administrative journey, like in a leadership role, the more and more I'm finding that this is the most important thing to get all the other stuff in place. So talk about school culture and climate and what we need to prioritize and what districts can do. We're going to talk through staff wellness and why it's so critically important right now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start. What is staff wellness?
All right. Well, I did the research this time.
Yeah, that's good. Finally pulling your weight a little bit.
So, staff wellness, it could be workplace wellness is also what it's called. I think in a school we often refer to as staff wellness. It has started back from the 1900s as kind of like why labor unions were started, to kind of help provide some a better quality worker experience for people. In the 2000s, we are referring to it more as staff workplace wellness, and it's really become because of the healthcare costs for companies skyrocketed. So you probably started, I know in our district, we started like a wellness committee, right? But it's all an impact now. Started with labor unions, but now we're looking at healthcare costs. How can we get mental health, like physical health and those kind of things in check so that we can lower our healthcare costs and ultimately like the bottom line. It all goes back to money, right? The bottom line. But that's so that you can look at some activities and programs, policies, and those kind of things that have been designated, like time off and health classes and those kind of things that have been put into place for any business that you're in.
Yeah. I think we can also, like in our world, right, you can shift this phrasing from even staff wellness to staff regulation, right?
Oh,
Couldn't you? Or like workplace regulation. And I think that maybe even gives like a slightly different feel to it for some reason. I think wellness, and maybe it's because of all like the officialness of it now. To me, like when I think of like wellness stuff or in places I've been before, even where we're at now, obviously we have like wellness committees like you referenced. And I think sometimes to me, I think about those as like a very specific kind of thing. Whereas really it permeates everything that we're doing with our staff. And so that idea of staff regulation seems like a more of a consistent as opposed to like an event. Or a specific moment in time, like we're going to focus on staff wellness today after work hours, right?
Yeah.
But instead, it's way more about like that consistency and that regulation. And so again, if you're like that, when we say regulation, if you're just jumping in now, you haven't heard us talk about it. It's kind of that ability to stay even, right? Or not be too overwhelmed, but to kind of be right in that sweet spot of not being too amped up, not being too low, and not doing anything but kind of like right in that great spot and ready to go, being able to access kind of the higher parts of our brain.
Yeah.
Being regulated, right? So staff regulation, staff wellness, I think they're kind of interchangeable almost.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, so why does staff wellness matter then?
I think we'll hear us. We have episode 5, right? Educator State of Mind. That's out. That we know educator. Dysregulated adults don't regulate kids.
Yeah.
Dysregulated adults create dysregulated classroom spaces. We have teacher burnout that is happening. We talked about that in another episode where we have a mass exodus of teachers like leaving the field or people actually not going into the field. So that work culture and climate really needs to be strong. So that school climate and culture really will make or break the systems and places for kids. Whether kids have a sense of welcomeness or belonging in the classroom, you have a negative culture and climate, they just want the kids out. Right. So you
Yeah,
got to
sure.
start taking care of the teachers so that they can take care of the kids. And then the joy of learning. So if we have good staff wellness, then teachers feel joyful and empowered to learn and teach the way that they feel fits their personality type. They feel joyful. Kids feel joyful about learning. We see high impacts.
Yeah.
So it all kind of ties back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always go back to starting at the idea that, staff wellness matters because the staff members are humans.
Yeah.
Right? And human wellness matters, right? Like, so who we are as people, that should matter most. I think Dr. Biddle in our last episode referenced that, right? Being fully human, not just looking at ourselves in the workplace, but I think we can take that even one step further. And let's not just look at the teachers as a piece of the puzzle during the day while they're at school doing their job, right? But let's start looking at them as whole people. They're not just like numbers or, and we certainly aren't just robots. Sometimes I think we expect ourselves to be.
Yeah.
We expect ourselves to be able to power through no matter what's going on. Anyway, I just think it matters that people in general are well and are taken care of. And so teachers fall into that, right? They're people too. You mentioned it, stressed, overwhelmed, frustrated, drowning kind of humans are never going to be able to regulate other humans.
Yep.
And kids can only learn when they're regulated. So they won't be able to access their higher parts of their brain, their cortex, things like that. They won't be able to accomplish nearly as much learning when the staff members are not in a good regulated spot. And so then it becomes a crazy cycle, right? If you're somebody that's gotten yourself so stressed and you're so overwhelmed, your kids aren't learning necessarily super well. Now you're even more stressed and overwhelmed, right? Like we create this like awful cycle and then we're like, but they're doing bad. And then like then the room's feeling chaotic and then like the kids are feeling it. And then like you get even worse and worse, like as far as dysregulation, it becomes a whole thing. And so I think, again, that's why it's not just like a one-time, one-off, kind of like wellness event. I mean, not that those are bad. We'll talk about those probably, I'm assuming, here coming up. But I think that it's still like, how are you building it in consistently throughout the course of every day?
Yeah. And you talk about kids not being able to learn. We're PDing staff, right? Dysregulated staff are not.
Phrase, I don't know why, but the phrase PDing, I felt like there's no way that's going to sound easy on a podcast. Maybe it will. Maybe everybody caught it.
We're professionally developing staff. And so if they're dysregulated, right, they're not receiving anything that we're trying to grow and develop them either. Right. So if we want some of these new, more innovative practices to come into place.
Yeah, we're surprised. I think sometimes we're surprised that like staff's having a hard time. Like, why aren't teachers implementing the stuff that we're doing? Whether it's this new math program, whether it's new, whatever, doesn't matter what it is. Why aren't they implementing it? And it's because they're having a hard time even accessing their own higher level functioning brain. So it's no surprise, right? Because they're so overwhelmed or dysregulated themselves. All right, so now let's talk about the actual work of it, right? So what are the intentional things that we can start to do to take care of our educators?
Yeah, I think teachers, we hear this time and time again, I keep on getting more on my plate, but nothing comes off.
Yeah. So
really evaluate, who do you have on your staff? This is something I'm trying to be super intentional about next year. How do we get teachers off duty time? We often have teachers that are covering recess duty and morning arrival and covering this duty. And, but you also need to have like your planning time and teach all these kids. And it's a constant go, 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 go all day. They're eating lunch on the go and those kind of things. How can we create schedules and really look at the big picture of who you have on staff and think about your staff that is consistently teaching all day long? How can we get those folks to pause and give them a little extra longer lunch break so they have a little more time to co-regulate with their staff members, to connect with people? So I think being really intentional about your scheduling and really looking at, how can I get this person off so they can write the part 1 for the EGR, or they can help co-regulate with the kids so it's not the principal and counselor doing it all the time, right?
Yeah.
So that might mean being on duty for some things so that my teachers have time to help work and manage with the kids. So those are some of those systems things that we talk about, like how do we get teachers to kind of take ownership? You got to look at the schedules. We've really been intentional about doing some collective care events. Those are great opportunities for co-regulation to occur within your staff and some team building things. Those are things that I fund that are right after school during paid time that we just intentionally stop once a month and do things. We've had a yoga instructor come in. We did goat yoga, which was hysterical. So much. If you want to laugh really hard, that was fun. We've done craft type things, cooking, cookie decorating. We did a 5K together. Bring your dog to work day. That was awesome. And I think I'll bring that back every year. That was right before spring break. People that had dogs, hear that could handle it and that were safe to be around children that weren't in a classroom all day.
Was your dog there?
My dog was not. Yeah. Oh. That's weird, right? Neither one of us brought
all kinds of things about Katie's dog.
Yeah, neither one of us brought our dogs intentionally.
No, I did not bring my dogs
we did
either,
not.
no.
But that was really fun for the staff and kids, and was really well received. We've had somebody come in and work on meditation and a wellness coach has come in. We've done nature hikes. We've had someone who had a musical talent come and sing after school one day for us. It was awesome. Trivia, online trivia. My brother Zoomed in trivia with our staff. That was fun. We're going to do like a little walking tour of our revitalized downtown. Our school's close to a downtown space, so that's super fun this upcoming year. Thinking about shopping, those kind of things, just to kind of get collective care events, be intentional, put them on the schedule for the whole year. You'll have 6 people that show up and you'll have 25 people show up sometimes, and just be okay with whatever it is. It's just an opportunity for co-regulation to occur.
Yeah. And we just talked in episode 15?
Yeah.
About like that importance of connection, right? And having shared experiences.
Yeah.
And this is a really great way to have a shared experience that doesn't, some of those kinds of things, that doesn't have to do directly with your job either. Because we do have as staff, we have a lot of shared experiences that have to do with our job.
Yeah.
And so to be able to create intentional times where you can have shared experiences that don't have to do with, students and our day-to-day job is important. I think that's important to connection and to providing just a good workplace to be in.
Yeah, and they're optional and they're accessible because it's right after school. It's not like you have to come back at 7:00 at night or go meet here. It's like right after the bus visit. This has come to our school to do this. Think about tier 1 planning and instructional time, and I try to be getting teams together to plan and really talk, but also I'm trying to be more intentional about giving them ownership of time back so they can kind of drive. I think that helps with the wellness, to be able to talk and collaborate on things on topics that it's important to them, but I also have things that I need to talk about, but giving time and space for both. Positive affirmation. Sometimes that's people's love language. It's definitely mine. Tell me I'm doing a good job. I'll do anything for you. I don't really care about money and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, comment now to tell Katie she's
doing a good job. I will go the mile for you. So I just think, how do you know that people feel affirmed, and it looks different for everybody, but being more intentional about giving those, like, hey, great job today when you were talking with that kid. I really loved how I heard you saying, like, be intentional about that. We're trying to revitalize our lounge space and the wellness center. I've seen other schools do this. Super fun idea, but really making a space that people want to come into, so they want to have lunch together or want to go in there to meet and plan. So it's a space for that co-regulation or collaboration time to happen. And then distributed leadership. I think I see a lot of administrators make the mistake that they're always in charge of everything. If I leave the building, everything we worked on crumbles. It will not sustain or maintain. I'm not there a day. I can't be at this meeting because I have to be in my building. That's not good leadership. You're just being a boss.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you feel like there's no systems in place, I should be able to walk out of my building for 2 weeks and everything we were doing is maintaining, because you have that distribute leadership opportunities. And to be real honest, I have people with gifts and talents that are so much better at things than me, and to empower them to lead. And how much better is it to learn from a colleague who has an expertise area, and they feel so much more confident to be in the building, to have that expert leader there. Allow distribute leadership. I see that being a struggle for a lot of leadership positions right now.
Yeah, I think that's a crucial one too, right? Because otherwise, then we have administrators burning out as well.
Yep.
Because you feel like everything's on you. Yeah, I think, how do we help staff keep regulated? I think we have to help them know how to do that and what that even means. So I think even like preaching, teaching how to actually, we have a handful of episodes go on rest, right? What rest really looks like, and what kind of resetting really looks like, and the consistency of that. I think that's maybe episode 12. On summer care and such. But I think we doing like teaching people how to do it, which sounds maybe silly initially, right? But I think people have to maybe be taught explicitly how to do some of those things and be given some permission. Actually, go one step further, because I think we are really good about giving people permission to rest and take care of themselves, and rightfully so. And I don't think this is just a specifically school thing, but I see it in schools all the time, where we give people permission. No, it's important. Teachers should take care of themselves. Teacher wellness is important. You should be taking care of yourself first. I think people believe that. I think what we struggle with is like doing stuff to make that happen. So it's one thing for whatever level of administration to say that. It's another thing to start doing like rubber meets the road kind of things that that provide that opportunity, or even, I don't want to say force that opportunity. I think that's maybe a little extreme, but like really build that opportunity in for people to have those kind of breaks and those times to take care of themselves, because the action and direction to staff about that actually might be necessary more so than just permission. Because I think teachers are hard workers, typically speaking, and they don't want to fall behind. They want to stay on top of things. They want to do well, and they want to do right by the kids in their class. And so sometimes that can be looked at as like just go, go, go. And I think we have to find ways to, and I think you've done a good job of that, honestly, of finding ways to provide time for people, and reminding people to take it, but then also like not just saying like, oh, but you should take care of yourself, but being like, hey, you should take care of yourself. I'm going to do this for you now.
Yeah.
Which actually leads me into something you touched on as well already. But it's kind of more of a multi-step solution or approach, I guess. But it's empowering and training staff to be in charge of student behavior and discipline, right? Because I think we hear over and over again from various administrators and various principals places, right, that they have to spend all their time either putting out fires, or they have a line of kids outside their office, 4 days a week. They have a line of kids outside their office who are being sent down for disciplinary action or whatever else. And then they have their regular job duties that they're trying to take care of. And how do you possibly get that done when you have a line of kids that you're also having to meet with? And you're constantly having to put out all these fires from every single classroom in the building, or in your unit at a middle school or a high school, right? Like in whatever your section you're in charge of. How are you able to do that? And I think that the key is empowering and training your staff to be in charge of student behavior and discipline. Because can you imagine as an administrator if you only had to deal with the absolute most extreme? I mean, because there's going to be stuff that comes up that falls to you. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
But most things shouldn't have to when it comes to discipline and behavior in students, because our staff should be trained well enough to be able to deal with it themselves. So here's why it becomes multi-step. So by doing so, and this is where you already kind of touched on it, which I thought was good. Good job on us being on the same page. Look at us. But by doing so, then administrators will actually have way more time and freedom to not just get their own job done, but to actually be able to then go and support their staff, which I would imagine is why a lot of administrators got into what they're doing. It wasn't just that they were like, I hate being in a classroom now. I mean, I'm sure that exists. But I think most of them were like, oh, I want to be able to go and help at a different level.
Yeah.
And then they find out like, oh, well, now all of a sudden my job is just like behavior manager and paperwork doer of some sort. And if you could take part of that away, and then all of a sudden they have the freedom to go do that part that they most likely got into the job to do anyway. So with that time and freedom, then the admin can intentionally provide breaks and opportunities for staff to be able to breathe and actually like recover during some of their like really tough stretches. So not only can they like build in consistent things where they're helping out, but they also can like have the time to go and check in on staff, have a much better feel for the pulse of the building, and be able to identify, hey, who's going through a rough stretch right now, because we all do.
Yep.
And who can I then like very specifically be like, hey, you know what, I'm actually going to teach a special class for your class today, and you can go for this next 40-minute period and get done whatever you need to get done. Or take it easy if that's what you need for this 40-minute period. But I think you have to, that's like a longer approach, right? That takes a lot of intentionality and teaching on purpose so that the staff members actually know how to do it. I'm not saying you just throw them to the wolves and you don't give them any tools for how to be the ones that are in charge, but you have to like actually teach and train staff so they can do those things.
Yeah. Provide the professional development, put the systems in place.
Yes, systems.
The systems in place. And we have 9.1, 9.2, and episode 11 are all crisis response. So you have to put those systems in place and really have a conversation with your staff at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and have them invested in doing the discipline policy with you and what that looks like and how do you do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But, and don't wait to do that. Don't wait until it's like people are burning out to do those systems. I know we talked about that when we were doing those episodes, but it's a good reminder. Don't wait. Do them now. Like, get them done now. Like, and if you're catching this before your school year starts, I don't know that that'll really be many people, but like have those conversations now. Well, there aren't kids in the building and people aren't in more of a little bit of a panic mode or so busy. And then the last one, as far as like intentional things we can do to kind of take care of our educators, I think it's important to remind yourself, if you're an educator, or your colleagues, right, who are around you, that the whole world doesn't revolve like around just your classroom. Because it is easy for us as educators. That's not like we think we're so great, so it all revolves around us. But I think it's like when you're in it every day, you can start to feel like everything that's happening in the world very much is specific to your job. Mm-hmm. And then by the time you go home, you're probably doing work at home too, right? Like stuff's getting so intense. Like everything has to do just very specifically with like the 30 by 30 room that you're in. I don't know if that's even remotely accurate for most people, like size wise, but that was my best quick guess on the fly. But really, actually, there's somebody that we work with that we do this to each other every now and again. Like that, I'll remind her, or she'll remind me. Like if it's a tough stretch, she'll be like, "But you know what? Like this isn't your life though, and your life's really good, and you really like your life. This is a part of your life.
Yeah.
But this isn't your life. Like there's all kinds of stuff you enjoy in your whole. And when you look at your life as a whole, there's all kinds of stuff you enjoy and love and are doing. And like this is just a rough stretch in your job right now.
Yeah.
You know,
such a good perspective.
And so I think it's good to have those people around. It's good to be that kind of person to somebody else too. So remind each other of that.
Another thing I think, just to add on one more thing, is that when you know someone's in a really bad stretch, know who their person is at work. I'm not always the best person for someone just to dump their stuff on, but I know who their really good friend is at work, and I will go cover for that good friend so they can come up and I've done that several times. Hey, I know you're super tight with whoever. They're having a really hard time right now. Can you go, I'm going to cover this for you. Can you go up and take my office, spend some time, talk about this with them. Co-regulate with them, because sometimes you need that really safe, trusted person to do that. So know who people's people are in your building and recognize that, and then provide. I've covered duty for people. This thing just happened in their classroom, and I think they need a debrief with somebody. I think you're the person that could do that with them.
Sure. No,
let me cover your duty so you can go do that. But so just be mindful about that.
Yeah, again, it doesn't always you don't have to always be the solution as the administrator or as even a colleague, right? You can be somebody that even kind of behind the scenes almost is the one that's helping them out by doing something like that. That's good. All right. So how do you evaluate the effectiveness of your staff wellness program?
Well, I did a little more research. So
shocking.
So here are the top 6 things to measure employee well-being. Employee satisfaction. So how did employees feel about their job and how it's going? So you're going to have to survey your staff. We talk about this all the time. Get feedback. Feedback's not always fun or easy, but you don't get the feedback. You really have no idea how things are going, and it's your false perception.
Yeah, you have to actually ask people.
And sometimes it's going, and in my case, I feel like I'm harder on myself. It's usually going way better than I actually think, because the one person says it's not going well. That's actually not how the staff feels. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So be mindful of that. Employee retention. If you're having mass exodus out of your building or people just wanting to transfer out, like make that a mindful moment. Like you've got to start working culture and climate stuff. Retention, employee motivation. You're taking on new initiatives. Are you doing the initiative by yourself, or do you have like a collective buy-in where people are invested and motivated to do that? That's part of staff culture and climate.
And again, like then if you're gone, it doesn't fall apart, right? Everything shouldn't be centered around like the one person.
Yeah, absolutely. Distributed leadership, which is a real struggle for anybody in leadership right now, which I just see over and over and over again. Management satisfaction. So if you're higher up in like a superintendency role, directorship, like or even in your building, if you've got people that are in leadership roles, we have a leadership team. Mm-hmm. How are your leadership team feeling about their duties and responsibilities? Are they burn out too much? You to make adjustments. Peer satisfaction. So how do people feel about their teammates? Are you giving time for those teams to collaborate and find partnerships and working well together? And then the general just work environment. Does it feel warm and welcoming? But all that has to be done through feedback. Either you sit and have that open door and authentically let people come tell you, or get feedback through your leadership team, or send the staff survey out. You need to get feedback so you can tell how it's going. So
yeah, and then you can't be. You can have a reaction. I'm not saying again, don't have your reaction to whatever the feedback is.
I have reaction.
But you can't be, but you can't be mad about it or like let that impact whatever your reaction is or however it feels. You can't let that impact what you do next, right? You have to be able to take it for what it's worth. So maybe that like after you get, for you, maybe you are just a person that can read that kind of feedback and really just receive it right then. And you're like, well, I'm detached enough that I can handle that right now. Yeah. Or if you're somebody that's like, oh, I know I'm going to read the feedback on a Friday evening, so I have to have all weekend before I have to even see people again that maybe gave the feedback. I mean, just know yourself. I preach that a lot, I know, but like I think it's super important at every level to like really know yourself so you know what your best practice is. I think that's a good list. I don't have necessarily much more to add. I think again, ask staff, and then actually be perceptive. Be willing to be perceptive too, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a teacher. Because again, we've got a lot going on and we can feel like our whole world is whatever's happening in our room. And I think as you're walking the halls, as you're popping in to talk to people throughout the day, as you're at lunch, hanging out with people, whatever it is, be perceptive, be aware, really be gauging where people are. It's not like it's your responsibility. You have to own that, but it's part of being a community, right? Is being able to like clock where people are and be like, oh, okay. Like they seem to be having a really hard time today. Or this person's always down in the, staff lounge eating lunch and they haven't been for 4 days. Like, I wonder if they're doing okay. Like, I wonder if they need help with something. I know, check in with people when those are the situations so that people have the help they need, I guess. But so much of that comes down to being perceptive and not just being, it sounds mean, but like not being self-centered and not just always looking within yourself. And there are going to be stretches where you're not the one that's doing that in the building as much because your stretch is crazy busy and you're the one that's not going down to the staff lounge to eat lunch when you always do, or you are the one that's a little bit more overwhelmed. I think be willing to reach out during those times. But yeah, definitely be perceptive of other people around you.
Yeah. And can I say, I get often asked by other administrators, like, how did you do that in your building? What's like part of your success? And I always say, I feel like I have a team of people that unconditionally love me, that are there for me through the good parts and the bad parts. And I would say kudos to the staff that I work with, because people will just stop by all the time. And it's not just one person. It's my entire staff will stop by and be like, hey, how are you? How are your kids? What did you do this weekend? They are just as good as I try to be about taking care of, and I don't do it perfectly, try to take care of them. I feel like I have a great staff that also takes care of me.
Yeah.
So I think if you're listening to this, it's about staff wellness, but also take care of your administrator. Super stressful job, a lot on their shoulders, just like everybody, but check in with them, have authentic conversations, be a support system for them. I think that's part, if you can think about instead of complaining's okay. Like, I don't want to say don't complain, right?
Yeah. We don't want people to be fake or not feel like they can be honest about things.
Say, this isn't going well. Here's an idea. How can I help you execute that? I have a lot of people that sit there and say, hey, I just some feedback, but here's how I think we can fix it, and here's how I can help support you do that. If you just go up and complain, it doesn't really serve a purpose other than you're probably tarnishing a little bit of a relationship and kind of killing the culture and climate. So just be proactive. Think about it. It's okay to give feedback, but just think about how you can be proactive in supporting your administrators.
How are we doing that productively? Yeah. All right. Why do you think self-care gets such a bad rap? And like, what can we do to correct that maybe?
Yeah, I think we joke around about it all the time. It's like, go take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I think because we say self-care and then the people who say it actually don't practice it themselves. Sure. They're sending emails on the weekends, at night, they're working on their vacations, they're not taking time off, right? Or
so by example, it looks like what's expected is to always be on.
Yep. Yeah, so we're not practicing. I was super intentional because I'm one of those guilty people. I took a lot of time off this summer and really intentional about, I told my staff to find joy, go do things you like, walk away from work. So I felt like I really had to model that this summer. And I have. And it kind of bites me in the butt when I come back and I've gone working for 4 days before I'm off again. Boy, do I like burn out some stuff. But I mean, it's been really good. That I'm not sending them a bunch of summer emails or expecting anything from anybody. Like, our only job this summer was to rest. And so if that was what I'm saying, then that I've got to practice that a little bit. So I think that's part of it. And then we don't put systems in place to allow self-care. Like we just talked about, here's a bunch of things. Like we say self-care, but what does it mean? What are your systems? How can you intentionally do that in your building? So I think there's no system. So then it's like just dead words coming out, right? Take care of yourself, but I have no way to provide or do that for you. Good luck.
Yeah.
So I think if you can put some systems in place and model that, and kind of be reflective about your practice, then I think that you switch self-care to collective care or collective regulation, right, in the building.
Yes. Yeah.
That will shift kind of your thought process.
Collective regulation. Has anybody coined that yet? Maybe we were the first ones.
Copyright right now.
Yeah,
copyright that, Josh.
Put it on a t-shirt somewhere.
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. Yeah. And, I feel like I was just thinking really self-care since COVID. Yeah, I'm so tired of talking about COVID, but it's such a big thing.
Yeah.
Has really felt super unrealistic. I think it's for a lot of reasons. I think, but specifically for teachers, especially, we're short on teachers, right? We're short on substitutes. A lot of people stopped coming to do substitute teaching, and then just never came back, which I get. Expectations to catch up have been a lot higher, especially this last year, right?
Yeah.
To catch kids up. There's been a lot of pressure in general, I think, to do well, again, and with short staff and no ability to really take off. So I think there's just a lot of these things that, and a lot of professions have heard, that self-care, but where the rubber actually meets the road, it's been really hard to accomplish. So I think when we hear it now for the last handful of years, we're like, right. I mean, I joke about it a lot. It's like, well, take a mental health day, and you're like, but just know that your class will have no substitute, and that your whole team that you're working with is going to be thrown into a tizzy because of it.
Yeah.
And that you'll have somehow more paperwork when you come back. So there's all of that. I think that's why, again, go back to whatever episode we talked about, summer self-care 12, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But like that's why it's so important to build in like consistent kind of things that you're doing that bring you joy and that help you genuinely rest on a consistent basis.
So you're not breaking and having to take a mental health day.
Yes, you're not getting all the way to the bottom of your cup before you're like, oh, now I need to do something to kind of even fill my cup up back to 1/8 full, so I can get through the next week of my time. Like, build those things in. I think that's one of the ways that we honestly correct this narrative of it being a bad thing, is that you realize it's kind of a rhythm. I think, again, Dr. Biddle did a good job of talking about that. Like, there's this whole life, right? Your whole life. Like, and you can feel like your teaching is what your whole life is, because you may genuinely love it and enjoy it. Hopefully you genuinely love it and enjoy it if that's what you're doing for a profession. But I think at the same time, recognize that shouldn't be everything that you're always doing all the time. Like, you have a life outside of this, and you should have relationships and experiences that have absolutely nothing to do with your job. And you should build those things in. And I think reminding people of that is super important. And I think giving ourselves permission to have the weekend. Again, I think that was Dr. Biddle that brought that up in that last episode. Have the weekend where I'm not going to do any work. I'll work crazy hard for 5 days, but the weekend I'm going to not do any. Or, I know every Thursday afternoon I'm going to go and do this certain class or meet up with these certain friends. Or I know every Tuesday night is this thing that we go and do. And I'm going to honor that every time, even if work is busy, so that I have those kind of things in place. Anyway, go back and listen to that episode. We talk about that kind of stuff a lot, but I think that's important. And I think just reminding teachers about perspective, we tend to think in chunks of time, because that's what's all around us, right? So more than maybe any other profession, we're like chunked in time, right?
Focus,
so
we're on quarters, in between breaks.
Even every 4.5 weeks, we know that midterms are coming out, that we have to be like ready for this, and then we have every 9 weeks, we've got grade card, so we're always thinking in these chunks of time, and I think that makes it really hard to step back and think really big picture. And I think it's really important for us to step back and think really big picture about life in general, because if you're only thinking 4.5 weeks isn't that long, 9 weeks isn't that long. And so when you're thinking in just small chunks of time like that, there's always a deadline that you feel like you're up against. Remind yourself that, life's going to go on. 3 years from now will happen, no matter what happens specifically today on whatever afternoon this is. Like, it's going to keep going. Like, the world's not going to stop spinning. So kind of remind yourself of that, give yourself a little bit of a break and some freedom to be able to understand that your classroom isn't just the end all of everything, that you have a whole life that you should be living outside of that.
I was thinking about that. Like, by nature, I would say 80% of my really close girlfriends are in education. I've got a couple that are in business or whatever. Or you go out with people, then their spouses are not in education. I've had to be really mindful and intentional And I think the spouses are really good and being like, we're going out tonight and we are not talking about
school.
Yeah. I feel like they like said the groundwork. I just recently went on a trip and like 5 out of 6 of us were educators. And the one person that wasn't, like, was super intentional to be like, we are not talking about work or school at all these next, like, 4 days. And we're just going to have a good time, But that's really hard when you get around because it's also good for yourself to go out and talk about other things and get to know people that have their lives are outside of school.
Yes.
Don't let that be the driving force for really authentic relationships. Should have other things, components other than just work talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, ultimately, when we talk the brain science behind all this, all those things are regulating, right? All those things are things that help us engage our brain in a different way and are ultimately regulating. And if we're going to be regulated, which we need to be, if we're going to be effective teachers, then we have to do things that help us regulate, and being out, doing things that have nothing to do with our classroom, getting outside, finding the things that bring you genuine joy and rest, not just being numb, right? Don't just numb out to stuff. Like actually do those things that bring you real rest. All right. So what do you want people to walk away knowing after this episode?
That this kind of is the plate when they talk about like this is really the plate or the foundation of if you really want to shift your building to trauma-informed care and really do what's best for kids, you kind of have to take care of the staff that are able to implement it, right? So you come in, it's fine to come in with all this PD and these great ideas about like how things should be, but if your staff doesn't feel supported or taken care of, and I don't do it perfectly at all, there's been a lot of self-adjustment and stuff, so I don't want anybody to hear this like I've got it all figured out.
I'm perfect,
For sure don't, and the staff has been great about giving me feedback, but I do find it very important. I prioritized that taking care of them means that I'm taking care of the kids, which means that we can do this really hard work with kids that really need it and put those systems in place. So just know that this really is super important. Don't brush this off of a self-care event. I'll host this one thing, and it's be intentional throughout the school year. And if you start by changing this, the rest of it will come. And ultimately, the teachers that feel heard, seen, and valued, they need to feel that because they're really doing the hard, stressful job. So
yeah, I think, yes, what I want people to hear is like, yes, you have a super important, meaningful job as a teacher, because that's absolutely true, but you shouldn't be killing yourself for it, right? It's not like you have to sacrifice your life to be a good teacher. That shouldn't be how it works. It's not like some martyr kind of job, right? But if you truly take care of yourself, you're actually going to be a better, more impactful teacher to your kids than if you're not taking care of yourself and you're just getting yourself overwhelmed by it. So remember that. Again, find ways to be restful. I think it's important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys, as always, for joining in the conversation with us. Hopefully you found something in this encouraging, useful, especially at the beginning of the year, if you're listening to it as it comes out, if you're listening to it later on. Hey, it's never too late to jump in and start caring about your wellness, regardless of what spot in the year you're in. Take care of yourself. It's going to make an impact in your students' lives and in your life. Most importantly, it's going to make an impact in your life. So take the time and do that. Like always, we just have a real love for when you guys reach out to us. It's so good to be able to hear from you guys and get feedback, get questions, get comments. Keep doing that. Keep letting us know what things we're doing that you want to hear more of, or what things we haven't touched on. We've tailored whole episodes to what people have made comments to us about. So keep doing that. If there's something you want us to hear from you about, or that you want to hear from us about, I guess, that would be good. And as we get ready to sign off, I guess, make sure that you go out and take care of yourself as well as doing the work.
Yeah. And take care of each other. Yes. Be intentional about both.
All right. Yeah. Let's go out there and do the work.
Let's do it.
Hey, everybody, let's keep the conversation going.
Like and subscribe below and keep the comments rolling.